All right, everyone, a very good evening. Right now it is 5 o'clock Indian Standard Time and 3:30 p.m. Dubai Standard Time. A very good evening to each and every one of you present over here. Right now, as you can see, the markets have concluded for today, right? Today being Wednesday, so the third day of today's week has been done and dusted, right? A lot of things have been taken into factor, how the markets have moved, what sentiment the market had initially started when, how certain factors had triggered a bullish sentiment and again concluding with a bearish sentiment. So I hope everyone is ready to go, ready to learn. Remember, the markets are done and dusted, but we are going to utilize this third streaming session to know more about the upcoming US elections. That's right. So, when such a big, significant event is taking place, remember, the US elections takes place once in 4 years, correct? So, and US being one of the most, heavily influenced economies in the world, there is a lot of possibilities of who can win and what implications it can have in the stock market. in the Indian stock market as well as the other stock market, especially the US stock market as well. I can see Sophia in the house. Hello, Sophia. I hope you are having a great evening. We are always delighted to have you in our community, to keep this community interactive by messaging and writing down your questions, your queries, your feedbacks, and I'm able to reply, and we are able to have good conversations. That is very important for these live streaming sessions. We need to know your questions, we need to know your queries, and based on that, using your questions and queries and putting my analytical point of view, based on the amount of experience that I have garnered, we can try to resolve, we can learn, we can update our knowledge. So I hope everyone is ready and is willing to know what the US elections hold for us. But before I continue, I need to make a quick check in terms of the number of people who are attending this particular live streaming session. All right, a lot of people out there have been informing me that Harsh, you explained very well. Harsh, you are very good, but हमारी इंग्लिश कमज़ोर है, हमें हिंदी में ज़्यादा समझ में आता है. टू ऑल दोज पीपल, अगर आप चाहते हो कि मैं हिंदी में भी बात करूं, तो प्लीज़ कमेंट बॉक्स में, चैट बॉक्स में आप लिख लेती हर्ष, प्लीज टॉक इन हिंदी ऑल्सो. We have this vibrant community of people from different parts of India, from different parts of the world, I suppose, having different experiences, different financial experiences. Some are newbies, some have little bit of knowledge, some have advanced level of knowledge. So please get ready. Sophia is writing, getting ready to take notes. All right, Sophia, you are always, very focused and always eager to learn. So that is a very good point. Before getting started, let me give you a quick introduction about myself. I am Harsh. I've been having 8 years of experience, right? 8 years of experience trading the financial markets. I mainly specialize in trading forex. You heard that right, the foreign exchange, correct? As well as commodities such as gold, silver, copper, platinum, etc. I also look at the US indices, right? The S&P 500, the Nasdaq 100, and the Dow Jones 30. Currently, we are also looking at the Indian sector, so the Indian indices as well as the individual stock. I am more of a technical trader who specializes in technical analysis, right? Analysis such as supply, demand, price action, order flow analysis, trend analysis, so on and so forth. There are many factors that are taken into consideration when we are looking at it, from a technical analysis point of view. But today, the main focus right now that we would be talking and sharing with you, beautiful people, would be about the US election. I'm very much sure, I'm pretty much sure that each and every one of you out there is aware that yes, the US elections are upcoming. The US elections are happening on the 5th of November, right? So almost one more week, and then the electoral polls will be concluded, and then the results, would be declared. So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of speculation, a lot of, um, a dilemma going across the globe in terms of who might win, who might not win. Just to put a clear stats in terms of who's leading, who's not leading, there is cutthroat competition between Mr. Donald Trump and Mrs. Kamala Harris. So the competition has been stiff. Both of them are progressing. Certain days show that Donald Trump is leading by 1 or 2%, by Kamala Harris. On other days, it's the vice versa, where Kamala Harris is up or leading the polls by 1 2%. So there is very stiff competition between the two, right? And that adds to that expands or that increases the intensity of uncertainty. What might happen? Because there is so much of competition, and with each party comes its own with their own philosophies of following, right? Of following their own ideologies as to how they would want to run the economy of the United States of America. So there's a lot to discuss, and let's quickly start with certain points, right? In terms of what exactly are we looking in terms of the US elections and how are they going to impact, right, the India's stock market sector. Now, quickly, let me just give you a small information to understand what exactly is, the overall perspective of the Republican Party against the Democratic Party, right? So let me open my trading view and show it to you, right? People, it's very important to understand this, and it is important to know that Democrats, remember, Mr. Trump is representing the Republican Party, while Mrs. Kamala Harris is representing the Democratic Party, right? So, Democrats are often seen as parties of proactive government spending, favoring policies that redistribute wealth. They are mainly focused towards uplifting the well being of the people, the citizens of the United States of America, while Republicans have reputation as being business friendly. For them, more than like prioritizing welfare of the citizens, they are more focused towards business oriented decisions, right? So reputation for business friendly party, favoring more passive policies with lower tax rate. They want to uplift the business economy of the United States, and that is how the philosophy of Democrats versus the Republicans work, right? Democrats are more, citizen or welfare oriented, while Republicans are more, business friendly oriented. I hope people are able to understand. This is just a basic understanding of what the Democrats, what is the philosophy of the Democratic Party and what is the philosophy of the Republican Party. All right. The next point that I wanted to look is there are many factors that are that are going to be affecting in terms of the US elections. Let me showcase the first one, right? First one is definitely it's going to have impact on the global market. Let me showcase that. So impact on the global market. So definitely with a lot of uncertainty of who's going to win, a volatile market will lead to fluctuations in the Indian share market. And why is that so? Because let me show you the article. It's very important to understand in terms of why there will be fluctuations in the Indian share market based on the US elections. People have to understand that the US and India are, in terms of business, they are collaborating at a pretty high level. So, certain, you know, especially if you read this particular line, the US is a major investor in India, particularly in technology, infrastructure, renewable energy, and manufacturing. A lot of emphasis goes on to, the IT sector, the information technology sector, right? As I had mentioned, the vast majority of, the companies in US, especially in Silicon Valley, right, which is the technological hub of USA, a lot of its business is generated from Indian customers, correct? And vice versa. A lot of IT tech giants in India, like Tech and Tech, Mahindra Tech, and Reliance Tech, the majority of the customers are based in USA. So it's a give and take. The companies in the USA are getting their revenue from Indian customers, and some of the big IT companies in India are generating revenue from the American customers. So this is a very significant point, that we have to understand. Coming back to the next point would be trade policies, right? I hope people are aware in terms of because entirely, when someone wins the election, it's not just about sitting in the Oval Office. There is going to be a lot of implications on, trades, policies, and certain, impacts that all of those are going to have. So, in terms of trade policies, let me delete this and let me shift this up. I hope people can see my screen, right? The next thing we are going to talk about is going to be of trade policy. Trade policies of the new government can affect India's exports and import. What are policies? Policies are regulations implied upon import and export of goods and services, correct? So with trade policy, you're going to have either a fluctuation, whether towards the positive impact or towards the negative impact. But the most important, aspect is, see, once I had mentioned, right? So it is the IT services, pharmaceuticals, and textile industry, which are highly, generating revenue based on the American consumers, right? So we will be having a fluctuation in the Indian share market, especially on the index, as well as certain sectors like IT, pharmaceuticals, and textiles. Okay, and in terms of who might win and what implications they might have based on the trade policy. If Kamala Harris becomes the president, she may carry forward what most of the trade policies of the current government, right? Current government is being handled by Mr. Biden, right? So it will continue on that same trajectory. But if Donald Trump had to come into power, he may pursue a more transactional approach with greater security of trade balance and migration. Now, trade imbalance and migration. I mean, pretty. You must be quite aware. During the tenure of Mr. Trump, he had, there was a severe backlash on immigrants, right? People who wanted to visit the USA from other countries to work were facing a lot of issues, correct? So that is the drop down where if Mrs. Kamala Harris wins, it will follow the current projections of the current government, right? Because they are from the same party. They are from the Democratic Party. But if Mr. Trump does come in, you are going to have severe implications, especially when it comes to migration and trade balance, because because Trump is from the Republican Party, right? And Republican Party has the philosophy of being business centered. They will always keep the Americans' interest first compared to the other people around. So we are going to have, you know, certain implications based on those as well, right? Certain there had been a statement by Mr. Trump quite before, I guess, a couple of when he was in when he was in control, when he was the president of the United States, and he has blamed India for high tariffs. I hope people are aware what tariffs are, right? Tariffs are the cost for importing goods, correct? So if a country, increases tariffs, right, for people who want to send their goods and services to USA, they have to pay more, correct? So again, he prioritizes immediate US interest over long-term strategic alliance. Remember, politics is very complex, but in its major crux, they have, short-term strategies and long-term strategies. So when it comes to short-term strategies, is within the next, couple of months to a year at the max. When it comes to midterm, it's between 1 and 3 years, and when it's long-term, it's above 3 years. So Mr. Trump is clearly focused on the immediate action that has to be taken, and he prioritizes on immediate US interest, right? So he has a history of taking a hardline approach to immigration. As I had mentioned, during his term, he had introduced restrictions on H-1B visa. I'm sure a lot of you would be aware that during the tenure of Trump, being the president of United States of America, we people, especially Indians, had a lot of issue applying for H-1B visas, applying for tourist visas as well, because with a lot of backlash set in terms of he wants to avoid, the inflow of immigration into the USA. He wants to prioritize US welfare before the welfare of immigrants. So he wants to, cut off the flow of immigrants, correct? So I hope people are able to understand. The third point that we would be covering would be we covered on the impact of on the global sentiment level, right? So of course there will be fluctuation. A country like USA will have implications all across the globe. The second point we covered was trade policies, right? If Kamala Harris comes into power, it's going to be it's going to be pretty much the same current conditions that we are seeing. But if Mr. Trump comes in, it's going to fluctuate tremendously. Then we are going to look at in terms of rupee, right? So come on, because being looking at the Indian share market, rupee is the currency, right, of India. So what will be the implication? What will be the impact that the elections will have on, you know, on rupee, right? So experts underscore that the US elections outcomes can affect the strength of the dollar, and a stronger dollar can lead to foreign capital outflow from emerging markets like India depreciating. So what they're trying to say is, based on the possible scenarios that can come out, if the dollar strengthens, it will have a negative impact on the rupee, right? The rupee might depreciate, all right? And we are going to talk more about this. I'm going to show you graphs. I'm going to show you more analytical information on this, all right? So I hope people are understanding. The fourth point is going to be based on foreign direct investments, right? So foreign direct investments are investments coming from foreign, based on foreign investments made abroad. So the US government's trade policies will significantly influence foreign direct investments in India. However, in the current geopolitical structure, experts find it will unlikely that the US administration will take steps that severely harm its trade with India. I have mentioned it again and again that US has strategic alliance with India, right? US and America, from a business point of view, from a strategic point of view, have similar interests. So USA will try not to do or not to take any step that will hamper, its relationship with India, right? So as of now, in terms of foreign direct investments, yes, you all must be aware, right? I hope Sophia is also aware that a lot of FIIs, right? A lot of funds, a lot of liquidity is being pulled out by the FIIs. So hopefully they should, not make any drastic changes based on the results of the US elections, right? Because they need to maintain strategic ties with India. The fifth point we are going to talk is about interest rates, because interest rates is very important, right? What is an interest rate? Interest rate is nothing but the rate at which the banks are providing an interest rate at which the rate of lending money to companies or individuals. So interest rate trajectory, we are going to talk about interest rate trajectories also in more detail, right? No, Sophia is writing, I've noticed that many financial bloggers are discussing the impact of the election on the stock market. We are connecting the dots, Sophia. If I'm going to tell everything today, then we are trying to connect as many dots as possible. I cannot let out all information today, right? So I'm trying to connect it in dots. I'm trying to give it to you in in small portions, and then eventually, because we are looking at the Indian stock market, we will talk more about it, how it's going to affect the stock market, how the sectors are going to get affected, what are the current sectors, those the particular sectors. We talked about IT, we talked about textile. So we're going to look into those sectors and find out, what are the current sectors doing and what could be the possible trajectory. I hope people are understanding, right? So experts in the like interest rate trajectory, we are expecting the rates to increase, but if the rates do decrease, it might lead to foreign investments in India. Or if the rate increases, if the interest rate increases, it could lead to foreign capital outflow. So these are some of the points which we had to cover up before we can start. We cannot just delve into the the crux. There are other people, there are many people out there who are giving out financial analysis of election. Everyone has their own methodology to follow, right? Not everyone is going to be the same. So in terms of the other points that have to be kept in mind, right? In terms of how, so we had talked about how it's going to affect the Indian rupee, how it's going to affect the foreign direct investments, and those investments, how they can have an impact on the stock market as well. This is very important to understand. This is the graph of the interest rates of the dollar, right? The interest rates of the dollar have been appreciating for the last couple of years, all the way from 2022 till 2024. In the year 2022, the rate was at a meager 0. 0.2, 0.8%. Right now, we are sitting almost at a 5%. 5% based on the interest rate for the dollar. So people are still expecting that if Trump comes into play, we would expect the interest rates to start depreciating. Why we would expect the interest rates to start falling, to start depreciating? Because he is business centered, right? If the interest rate lowers, then we have, more companies can borrow funds to carry out their businesses and so on. A very important part that we have noticed, and this is where I would want to share with you, is this: performance of the Sensex before and during and after the elections, right? People use data to kind of get, as many opinions, as many points of information as possible to connect the dots. The Sensex, right, before and after the US elections. Let us just focus on the last couple. I hope people can see my mouse. All right, so we're going to look at the last couple of elections, right? The one that happened in 2016 and the one that happened in 2020. For all those people who are, who do not remember, in the year 2016, it was Mr. Trump who had won, who had defeated Mrs. Hillary Clinton, right? And in the year 2020, it was Mr. Biden who had defeated Mr. Trump. So the year 2016 denotes to the year when the Republican Party was, in power, and the year 2020 denotes when the Democratic Party was in power. So if you can understand from the values, in the year 2016, one month before the elections, the Sensex, right, the BSE Sensex was at 27,866, but currently it had fallen to 26. This is when Trump had come into power. Conversely, when Biden, the Democratic Party, had come into power, Sensex was at 38,000 and rose to 47,000. So I hope people are able to connect the dots. When this has been the general consensus, when the Democratic Party, comes into power, the Sensex generally rises, and when the Republican Party comes into power, the Sensex generally falls. I hope people are able to understand. Nonetheless, we even look at how the Indian rupee has affected, right, against the dollar, especially after the US elections. Majority of the times, whenever the elections have come out, they have resulted in the rise of the US dollar. If the rise in the US dollar has, been significant, it will have a negative impact on the Indian rupee. So whenever you have the Indian rupee has always taken a plunge, after the US elections. So be in mind, and generally the rupee and indices, have a very similar connection. So Sophia is writing the impact isn't significant. We are getting into it, correct? The impact isn't significant. So these are certain points which we had to discuss. Let's go on to understanding which sectors, as I had mentioned, sectors such as IT, right? One second. Sectors such as IT. So, which is the IT sector? Let us go to the heat map to find out in terms of the technology services, right? So, in terms of technology services, the IT sector, let us go and search the Nifty IT, right? The Nifty IT index. I hope everyone is aware that the Nifty has several indices, right? The Nifty 50, the Nifty 100, the Nifty 200, the Nifty IT, the Nifty real estate, so on and so forth. But it is the IT sector that will be will be the most impacted sector when the US elections are out, because the IT sector has very significant correlation with the US economy, right? And anything that happens in, when such a significant event is taking place, such as the US elections, the IT sector will have, a significant move. Let me just quickly mark when the elections had taken place in the past and how the IT sector had, the IT index had reacted, right? Give me a minute. We have one that had taken place in 2020, right? So it had occurred in 2020 around 8th of November 2020, right? 8th of November, around here, right? 8th of November. Let me zoom in. This had been around 8th of November. Plus or minus, this had been the area when, you know, Biden had won, right? So this goes back to the time around 8th of November, right? Plus or minus. I hope people can see the screen. It's going to be around this area when Mr. Biden had, won, and how its implications had affected the IT index, right? The Nifty IT index. At the same time, we want to zoom out more and go back in the year 2016. 2016 is here. Let me shift it to again. Remember, the elections generally happen in the first or max to max second week of November, right? So 2016, November 2016, right? So somewhere around here. Again, it's going to be plus or minus around that same area, right? 8, as per what I remember, it is, let me quickly check the data. 1 second. So we had it in 2016 and 2020. So we had it on 3rd of November 2020. Let me just make sure the lines are on point. 3rd of November 2020, right? It's going to be somewhere here during the reign when Mr. Biden had won, and it was on 8th of November 2016 when Trump had won, 8th of November. So I hope people are able to understand. During the time when Mr. Trump had won, right? At that time, as you could see, there had been a strong fall in price. The reason for that is again because Trump is a strong believer in, implying policies which work in favor of American businesses. He does not favor, immigrations and his trade policies against, foreign companies establishing or local companies hiring, foreign talent to work in companies. He wants to support in Americans and their businesses. So people could see there has been at that time a significant fall in price, right? Yes, the prices had been, there was a huge gap during the tenure when Mr. Trump had won. I hope people are able to understand. While at the same time, if I'm zooming in and coming to the current, the last cycle when Mr. Biden had won, right? The last election that had taken place in the year 2020. During that tenure, which had happened on 3rd of November, right? During that tenure, there was not much significant movement because the Democratic Party, anyways, their main focus was not on immigrants and external foreign policies, but on the welfare of their own citizens. So it did not have much of a direct, impact on the IT index. The reason I'm talking about the IT index in particular is because the IT sector is the most highly sector that is, that is that can be influenced by the US election, because it's the IT sector and the textile sector, but the majority composition of, weightage goes to the IT sector. Currently, let's come back to the current market scenario, right? We have this. Currently, the markets are here. Let me plot the line. So 5th of November is somewhere here in the future, right? So during this time, what are we going to expect? Are we going to expect where prices are going to go up or prices are going to go down, right? Now the entire question arises on who's going to win, because again, with elections coming in, with cutthroat competition in terms of who will do good, who will do bad, which companies are going to, appreciate, which companies are going to depreciate. At the same time, when we talk about certain trade ideas that we also have. Luckily, based on IT companies, we do not have any current holdings that we that are based on IT, that are based on information technology. So we are quite safe in this particular manner. But speaking in terms of who is going to win, who might win, what the implications are if Trump wins. All right, if Trump wins, there's the possibility of the index, right? And if you're going to talk about the index being bearish, it's going to impact the companies also, right? So let me see if I can find Nifty. TradingView does not, provide a heat map of the Nifty IT companies, right? Let me go on to Google and search it. One second. Let's go to the Nifty IT and search for more information. We got Reliance, TCS, HDFC, Infosys, State Bank of India, so on and so forth, right? So, and again, these are heavyweights in their own, in their these are heavyweight blue chip companies as well, right? So when it comes to and when it comes to these companies which hold so much of weight, right? So these are the Nifty IT companies, right? Companies that are listed on the Nifty IT index, right? IT companies. And remember, if there are IT companies mentioned on the Nifty, they hold significant weightage, right? So HCL, Wipro, which are the gainers plus or minus. But what about Mahindra, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Coforge, Emphasis, Persistent, HCL Technology. So total we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 companies listed on the Nifty IT index, correct? Now how? What implications are they going to have based on the movement of price, whether the price will go up, whether the price will go down. If Mr. Trump comes into power, let me just type it out, right? 5th of November here. If Trump wins, the chances, the probability of prices falling will be higher. Why? Let me just reiterate. The prices might, have a stronger tendency to fall because of the reason of, trade restrictions, tariffs. Trump is an avid believer of, increasing tariffs on other countries for exporting their goods and services to America. So if Trump wins, he's going to, increase tariffs. He's going to, imply policies, especially for immigrants, right? People coming from abroad to work in United States of America. That is going to have a significant impact. The IT index will take a fall. If it is currently who, if Harris wins, right? If Mrs. Kamala Harris wins, the chances for the probability of price to continue up will be higher, right? Currently, if you zoom out and you see the entire picture, currently, as of now, we have the Democratic Party in the United States of America who is currently in power. Now that the elections are coming closer, we are again, if Harris wins, who is from the Democratic Party, as you can currently see, there have hardly been any fluctuations. So no such fluctuations will take place, and the index would have a general consensus to continue above. But if Trump wins, right? If Trump wins, then there is high possibility for prices to fall down because of the policies and because of the tariffs and because of the the implications on immigrants, right? Like the rules, the policy that would be based on obstructing the inflow of immigrants into United States of America. So I hope people are able to get a good gist. I hope, Sophia, I'm trying to provide you justice by trying to explain it in the best way possible that I can understand. And again, understand, with such cutthroat competition between the two, right? It is not like someone is leading by a big margin. There is cutthroat. One is here, the other one is here. So very close, right? So when both the contestants are very competitive and both are inching well neck to neck, so there is going to be a lot of uncertainty. Now there might be chances where even Trump might win and the prices might shoot up, and if Mrs. Harris wins and the prices falls down, remember the markets are going to be quite fluctuative, but nonetheless this is the analysis that we are projecting, and that is very clear based on you know the the philosophy of their respective parties. Trump from the Republican Party, like I had mentioned to you, Trump is from the Republican Party, right? They favor who? They favor businesses. If they favor businesses, it is favoring businesses of their own locality, American businesses, all right? No, I'm not talking about international Indian businesses. And if it is the Republicans, since their main focus is for the welfare of their citizens, the impact on businesses outside the United States of America will have less significance, right? I hope people are able to understand. As I had shown you in terms of, rupee, let me show you how the rupee is, the US dollar versus the Indian rupee. I know this is getting a little, more advanced technical, but I think it is very much important, right, to speak about it. Let me just quickly put the lines and showcase you again when, going back in the year 2020, right? So 3rd of November 2020. Around this date is when the elections had taken place and when Mr. Biden had won. At the same time, let's look at the year 2016. So it's going to be 8th of November 2016, right? So I hope people can understand, can have more clarity and understanding. Now, I hope people can see the two lines. This is when Trump had won, and this is the phase when Trump had won. Oh, sorry, wrong spelling. And this is the phase when Biden had won, right? So Trump represents the Republican Party, while Biden represents the Democratic Party, right? And Mrs. Kamala Harris is again from the Democratic Party itself. As you can see, the impact the US dollar had against, the Indian, right? So the US dollar appreciated quite well, correct? So Sophia is writing the US presidential election has an impact on the global economy as well. Yes, Sophia, it has, a decent amount of impact on the on international markets, but it is short-lived. It is temporary. Why? Because since other economies are functioning on their own. So yes, since everything is interconnected, interlinked, it will have implications, but not as severe as what the US markets will have, right? So the US markets are expected to be very volatile on the 5th of November. But when it comes to the English share market, yes, there will be minor fluctuations, but since elections are happening in US and not in India, but overall, long term, because we're looking at a span of 4 years, right? The presidential elections happen every 4 years. So we might not have instant fluctuation, but based on who wins and what policies are put into place, then we might have, a change or a shift in, sectors as IT and textiles, which, are dependent on the revenue being generated by the American the revenue is generated because of the American customers, right? But anyways, first let's finish talking about what is, what happened to the US dollar against the Indian rupee on those two presidential days, right? So I hope people can see this is when Mr. Trump had won in the year 2016, and during that tenure, the dollar had, had risen. So what we are trying to say, if the dollar did rise, the rupee had, a negative effect. The rupee had fallen, correct? I hope people understand we are looking at the US dollar against the Indian rupee. If the US dollar has been bullish after Trump came into power, the rupee was bearish, right? When Trump had, come into power. Similarly, when we are looking at when Mr. Biden had come into power, right? When Mr. Biden had come into power, the overall movement of price was bearish. So the dollar had, was bearish and the rupee was bullish. So try to understand, when Trump had won, let me just say Trump and Biden, Mr. Biden, right? Now, in terms of rupee, right? Rupee fluctuation. So when Trump had come into power, the rupee had taken a fall, right? I hope people are able to understand. And when Mr. Biden had come, the rupee had, appreciated in value. So when you know, certain factors that have already taken place in the past, we are trying to, gather as much of information as what was shown in the past, and based on that, who might be winning. Because at the end, we are looking at Trump, who is from the Republican Party, and Mr. Biden, who is from the Democratic Party. As shown, correct? When Trump had won, the US dollar had risen. If the US dollar had risen, it is, inversely correlated to the Indian rupee. So the rupee had fallen, correct? And vice versa. When Mr. Biden had won during the tenure of 2020, the dollar had fallen and inversely the rupee had risen, correct? So that is why I've shown you a clear depiction of during that 10 years, what was the impact on the rupee, right? So rupee had fallen during Trump's regime of presidency, and the rupee had risen. So coming to the current scenario in terms of what do we expect now, again a very similar picture. What do we expect and what can happen, on the 5th of November? It is the same thing. If Trump wins, right, then the dollar is going to appreciate. Again, we are trying to understand it from a rupee perspective. So it is going to have the opposite impact, correct? And if Biden wins, it is going to have a negative impact on dollar. So if Trump wins, the rupee will fall, all right, because of the the policies that will be implemented based on focusing on the American locals and their businesses, and then thinking about the foreigners, the immigrants as a whole. And if Biden comes into place, it is the inverse, right? So I hope people are able to understand and how we are able to connect how the US elections will impact the Indian, economy. Indian economy in terms of Nifty. Nifty might not have much movement because Nifty is an index for the Indian economy. But there are certain sectors such as IT and this one, textile, right? IT and textile and even defense to a small extent, where who kind of depend significantly on the consumption of products and services by the Americans. So we looked at IT because IT is the most significant sector, correct? And IT sector is going to dictate, who is what is going to happen. What could the implication of, one second. What could the implication of, one second. Why? I mean, TradingView does not showcase the Nifty IT sector. Let me just type it out once again. Here it is. Sorry. So, as we had talked about the implications, since the IT sector is hugely based on or is very dependent on the consumption of its goods, of its products and services from the Americans, we are going to have significant movements, as I already has shown you in the past how the movement of the IT sector will be affected. If Trump wins, the probability of the IT sector taking a plunge is higher. But if the Democratic Party, if Mrs. Kamala Harris wins, the tendency for price to continue, to continue its bullish trend will be more significant, right? I hope people are able to understand. So everyone is glued to their screens on 5th of November. We are going to be expecting a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty in the markets. But please be aware, when such uncertainties arrive, yes, there is chance to make good money, but there is also chance to lose a lot of money. Correct? So it's always advisable to observe what is happening in the markets, but be cautious when it comes to such events. Remember, the US elections do not happen on a regular basis, correct? The US elections happen only once in 4 years. So please bear in mind, it's a very important economy in the world, right? It has a very strong presence in world economics, world power, military power. So whatever happens in the US economy will have effect on the other markets, including the Indian share market, but it will be short lived. But based on the sector that is going to be mostly affected is going to be the IT sector. Certain companies inside, the IT index. Yeah, we talked about Wipro, HCL, Tata Consultancy Services. So other such companies are going to have its own, impact. Let's kind of look at what TCS is trying to showcase. TCS is Tata Consultancy Service Company, which is one of the blue chip companies listed on the Nifty IT index, right? Currently, based on this, let us just quickly put the lines to see how the elections had affected the this particular stock. So going back to the year 2020, so again 3rd of November, somewhere around here. One second. Yes, so around this is when Biden had come into power, and going back to 8th of November 2016. So we have entered 2016 around 8th of November, right? So somewhere around here. So I hope people are able to connect the dots. When Trump had come into power, the prices had taken a fall. I hope people can see, right? When Trump had come into power in the year 2016, a company like TCS, remember TCS is a significant company. It's a very prominent company in the Indian economy, and it has a good amount of weightage on the Nifty IT index. So when such a company, had bearish presence during the tenure of Trump, all right, and at the same time it's a company, all right, it's not an index that we're talking about. We're talking about one company. While on the other hand, when Mr. Biden had come into power, the overall projection of price of that stock had been bullish, right? So I hope how I'm able to connect the dots to explain to explain it to you in terms of what implications a sector can have, and if a sector has that implication overall, plus or minus, generally the consensus remains the same. The consensus remains the same for the individual shares also, right? So TCS will also. So people are asking like, Harsh, so what do you expect for a company like TCS? If Mr. Biden if Mrs. Kamala Harris wins, the price has a tendency to continue up. If Mr. Trump wins, the price has a tendency to go down. I hope people are able to understand, right? The rules, the policies, the implications that Trump can have on on establishing policies that can hinder India's performance in terms of its workforce coming to the United States to make a living and to work for the US economy, that will be affected significantly. So there are many aspects that we have taken into consideration. We have looked at the overall general concept of what is the Republican Party, what is the Democratic Party. We looked at how their ideologies, align on their self-interest. Democratic parties are based on uplifting the welfare of the US citizen, while the Republican Party is, business minded. It wants to, make businesses more achievable and, opportunistic for the locals, the Americans, correct? So a lot of backlash will be based on tariffs, certain policies which Trump highly, agrees to, especially when it comes to, having adverse effects on immigrants, and having embargo or tariffs on other countries who are trying to export their products and services to US. So I hope people have got a clear understanding. Not just did we talk about the general, you know we did talk about the general outlook of, both the parties, right? Both the parties, as in and the Republican and the other party. What is the other party's name? Tell me the name. The Democratic Party. All right, come on. I hope no one is sleeping. Correct. So we had a general outlook of what the both parties are. We talked about, the important aspects of, how how the elections will affect the Indian market, right? So we talked about how, certain aspects in terms of policies, rules, regulations, in terms of, applying certain trade rules in place to, hamper or affect, or to extrapolate more potential from their own, from the citizens of US. We talked a lot about that. Then we even talked about how it will affect US as well as Indian economy, right? Then especially we talked about the sectors, right? Which sector or sectors, right? But will be, affected the most. And we gave you examples, and we even talked in terms of, graphical, like how the rupee had been affected and how the Sensex had behaved, when Trump had come into power and when Mr. Biden had come into power, right? Which sector will be affected? And we even gave the illustration of, of TCS, because TCS is a very significant company which is listed on the Nifty IT index, right? So illustration of TCS, yeah, based on, past elections. I hope people are able to understand, right? Uh, yes. So we talked which sectors will be affected the most. Illustration of TCS, then impact it will have on, impact on the Nifty IT index, right? So these points have been covered, in overall, right? So we have tried to connect as many dots as possible. Remember, elections happen every 4 years, and the only way that we can understand, or get a broader understanding of what will happen, is only possible on what has already happened. All right. So what has happened in the past, we tried to analyze and get a clear picture, and we have been very much clear in trying to understand that for the Indian economy, for the Indian IT sector, if Mrs. Harris comes in, the potential for prices to continue up will be much higher. And if Trump comes in, because of with all his restrictions on, on and his sheer perseverance towards making sure, it's the US businesses which should, be more beneficial than the other businesses across the globe, including India. That is the reason why we might have a bearish sentiment if Trump wins, and bullish sentiment if Mrs. Kamala Harris wins. I hope I've provided you with a good amount of information. Remember, this third live streaming session has been mainly based on covering the upcoming US elections. The US elections are just around the corner. They are going to happen on the 5th of November. So we have tried to do our best. Harsh has tried to do his best in terms of, trying to connect as many factors as possible in terms of explaining what, how it would be affected, what would be the implications if Mrs. Kamala Harris wins or if Mr. Donald Trump wins. I hope you have learned some amount of information, and please make sure to attend all our live streaming sessions right from Monday till Friday, right? I make sure to come and provide you with three live streaming sessions every single day. All right, so make sure to tune in to tomorrow's live streaming session, which will take place in the morning. We are going to figure out and find out and analyze the trades that we have been taken, how the trades have been reacting, and we would be sharing you with potential trading opportunities once we do come across. All right, so I hope you had a great learning, and I hope you have a great evening too. All right, make sure you spend this evening with your friends, family, girlfriends, boyfriends, whoever you want to spend time with. All right, so until then, namaste, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, take care. Bye bye.